Remember when I said the iQOO 7 Legend is my de facto recommendation for the best smartphone under Rs 40,000? Well, the Mi 11X Pro is now here to challenge that status quo. So the Mi 11X Pro is essentially a souped up variant of the Mi 11X with a better processor and better cameras, of course, and so is the iQOO 7 Legend when compared to the iQOO 7. So which one of these two phones is the best phone under Rs 40,000? My name is Arshad, you're watching MySmartPrice, and this battle is going to be
Legend? Wait for it. Dairy. Legendary.
But before we move on, I hope you guys are staying safe, staying inside and taking care of your loved ones as well. And if you have to head out for any reason, don't forget to wear that mask. And just to make it easier for you guys, we have a list of articles where we've collated the best resources for you guys on our MySmartPrice blog. So go check the links in the description below. And while you're at it, consider subscribing the channel by hitting the red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it, because we want to get to 100K really soon. The Mi 11X Pro is identical to the Mi 11X. I wish there was some form of distinction in design somewhere. After all, the 11X Pro is the superior phone. Look at how iQOO has managed to create a distinction with the 7 Legend. Regardless, I'm really glad that Xiaomi sent over the Celestial Silver variant of the Mi 11X Pro for review. Although I must say that name is a ruse, it's anything but silver. It is a gradient that changes colors when the light falls on it from different angles. It does look pretty unique. Compared to the 11X Pro, the iQOO 7 Legend is fatter and heavier, but not by a lot. Both the phones are equally ergonomic, and when it comes to the design, I have a soft spot for the iQOO 7 Legend thanks to the matte white finish. Furthermore, it feels more premium as it includes an aluminum frame instead of a plastic one on the Mi 11X Pro. Another distinguishing factor of the design of the two phones is the raised camera module. However, on the iQOO 7 Legend, the protrusion is all but a mere blip. On the contrary, the bump is more pronounced on the 11X Pro. Therefore, the 11X Pro also wobbles a whole lot more in comparison. All that said, the 11X Pro does have a couple of functional improvements. It has a proper stereo speaker setup with grills up top, and you get the now famous infrared scanner as well. There's one thing that is a letdown on these phones, and that is the use of a far slower USB 2.0 Type-C port. But then again, Xiaomi uses the same tech on a more expensive Mi 11 Ultra. Now when it comes to the design, let's call it a tie. I think that the iQOO 7 Legend is more attractive and premium looking, but the Mi 11X Pro definitely has functional advantages, and of course the fact that it also comes with IP53 rating. The Mi 11X Pro and the iQOO 7 Legend both use an AMOLED panel a little over 6.6 inches in size. You also get support for high refresh rate 120Hz setting, HDR10+, and 1300 nits of claimed peak brightness in HDR playback. Like I mentioned in my previous video of the iQOO 7 Legend, you do not get HDR playback on Netflix. The Mi 11X Pro has it. Plus the 11X Pro has another ace up its sleeve, and that is MEMC using the video toolbox. Both the phones offer a nice and accurate color tuning. The Mi 11X Pro does it in the natural mode, whereas the iQOO 7 Legend does it in the professional mode. Fun fact, if you want to know the actual colors of the camera samples from these phones, use these modes to check it out. You get a nearly true to source representation. I ran my regular brightness test with the slider pushed to maximum on both the phones. Both are almost equally bright, touching close to 700 nits at peak. Although in my HDR peak brightness test, the Mi 11X Pro definitely pushed the brightness higher than the iQOO 7 Legend. But these are merely standardized tests. In real world HDR video playback on YouTube, I couldn't tell the difference between the two phones with my naked eyes. Both the phones were equally good at controlling the highlights and the shadows. However, the iQOO 7 Legend does have one ace up its sleeve. It uses the haptic engine as a pressure sensitive trigger in games, somewhat like 3D Touch on Apple phones of the past. And it does work like a charm in Call of Duty Mobile. I mapped the triggers to crouch and jump, and it really helped up my gaming experience. Although I still feel that the iQOO 7's MEMC display with upscaled 120 FPS in Call of Duty is actually a better perk compared to the pressure sensitive triggers on the iQOO 7 Legend. I consistently was performing better in ranked matches on the iQOO 7 than any other phone. In fact, this has now become my Call of Duty phone. Talking about gaming, the Mi 11X Pro offers a touch response rate of 360Hz. The iQOO 7 Legend can hit 300Hz with an instant touch sampling rate of 1000Hz. All of this just means that you get great gaming performance. Now the iQOO 7 Legend also uses an in-display fingerprint scanner as opposed to the side-mounted fingerprint scanner on the power button of the Mi 11X Pro. Obviously, the physical scanner on the Mi 11X Pro is faster at unlocking the phone. Now, rounding off the multimedia experience is the speaker setup, and the Mi 11X Pro with its true stereo speaker setup actually sounds louder and slightly fuller as well. But the iQOO 7 Legend is no slouch. You can actually take a listen for yourself. The one thing that clearly distinguishes the Mi 11X Pro from the Mi 11X is the 108 megapixel primary camera sensor. And it has an 8 megapixel ultra wide for a secondary camera along with a third 5 megapixel macro one. On the front is a 20 megapixel shooter. In comparison, the iQOO 7 Legend's main camera is the 48 megapixel Sony IMX598 one. You also get a 13 megapixel ultra wide and a 13 megapixel telephoto for portrait, which is more useful if you ask me. On the front is a 16 megapixel selfie camera. Let's get down to the camera comparison. Starting with the texture details, there's not much to tell the two apart in terms of sharpness at the center. The fine texture detail is present on both. The only advantage that the Mi 11X Pro has is sharp details around the corners, but overall both the sensors are super sharp in daylight conditions. When it comes to colors, the Mi 11X Pro is more accurate in most scenarios, especially with the deep reds. As you can tell from this sample, the iQOO 7 Legend makes the iPhone 12 case look pink and the zip on the earphone case as well. Plus the chair's foot is not the right shade of brown either. Also, the iQOO 7 Legend tends to make warmer images by cranking up the yellows in the picture. Anyway, these are unaltered JPEGs straight out of the box, something that you should know. While capturing HDR images, I had a slight problem in focusing on the Mi 11X Pro. The calendar on the front was always out of focus in my testing shots, although the dynamic range performance is good on both the phones here. In the second shot where I tap to focus on the calendar, you can see halo lines around the numbers on the Mi 11X Pro's shot, but then again the dynamic range performance is almost as good on both. In ultra-wide shots, the iQOO 7 Legend has an edge with its 13 megapixel camera, and the look it creates is more natural. It would be my pick for the better ultra-wide shooter. The iQOO 7 Legend does have an edge with its 2x optical zoom camera for telephoto, but the 2x digital crop on the Mi 11X Pro is not too bad. In fact, it looks equally good for the most part. As for the macros, the iQOO 7 Legend uses the ultra-wide angle camera to go close to a subject. It does get really sharp and close, eliminating the need for a dedicated macro camera. Not that the Mi 11X Pro's macro camera is a bad addition, no. In fact, it is one of the best dedicated macro cameras on a phone. But when the same can be achieved with the ultra-wide shooter, what is the need for a separate one? You can use a third telephoto portrait sensor like the iQOO has, right? So with human shots and shots of pets, I noticed that the iQOO 7 Legend was way better with skin tones. The Mi 11X Pro tends to shoot up the reds, as you can clearly tell from these two samples here. These are the shots from the primary camera, mind you. The same is true in portrait shots as well. The facial tones are closer to reality on the iQOO 7 Legend. The edge detection is similarly good on both the phones though. However, the iQOO 7 Legend has an advantage with its 2x portrait camera where you get some fabulous looking portraits. In regular non-HDR selfies, the iQOO 7 Legend renders a very appealing, natural looking facial tone. The Mi 11X Pro is not bad, but it has a contrasty look that ends up darkening my t-shirt too. But against the light, the HDR selfie of the Mi 11X Pro looks superb. Also, the Mi 11X Pro shoots wider selfies. Selfie portraits are equally good on both when it comes to edge detection, but the iQOO 7 Legend has natural details and a better looking facial tone. Although low-light selfies, whether it is night mode or not, looks better on the Mi 11X Pro. Coming to low-light shots, the IMX598 has better low-light sensitivity in regular non-night mode shots compared to the 108 megapixel sensor on the Mi 11X Pro. Plus, you get generally sharper shots thanks to OIS. And with night mode on, the iQOO 7 Legend introduces green chromatic aberration in the pixel correction. I like the natural look of the Mi 11X Pro. Also in the second shot, the iQOO 7 Legend has corrected the blue tint from my TV screen to make it look more attractive, and it does. But the Mi 11X Pro is more accurate looking. For example, imagine if you want to shoot a warm looking image near a table lamp. You'd be able to trust the Mi 11X Pro to capture the scene accurately. Regardless, the iQOO 7 Legend's sensor offers better light sensitivity, but the look is not ideal. In low-light ultra-wide shots, the Mi 11X Pro is way better. It offers a cleaner image. Just take a look at the floor on the iQOO 7 Legend's shot. It has created such dirty artifacts. You can shoot up to 4K 60fps videos on the phones. Both don't offer EIS or OIS in the case of the iQOO 7 Legend. The details and dynamic range are equally good on both. Sound recording is better on the Mi 11X Pro, and the colors are more true to life on the iQOO 7 Legend. You can see that the crop factor is much higher here, but of course you get stabilization because of that. But yeah, the dynamic range performance seems to be better on the iQOO 7 Legend at 4K 60 FPS, especially when you're looking into something that has extremely bright highlights. So yeah, so this is what it looks like. But the Mi 11X Pro has a major advantage, and that is it can shoot HDR videos, albeit without stabilization and limited to 4K 30 FPS. Both the phones can also shoot 1080p 30 FPS ultra wide angle videos, but only the iQOO 7 Legend offers stabilization. Again, it is such a toss up between these two for video recording. If the iQOO 7 Legend offers better stabilization, the Mi 11X Pro offers better HDR and better sound recording. The Mi 11X Pro can also shoot HDR videos using the front camera, which offers better dynamic range and no stabilization at 1080p 30 FPS. Even the sound recording is better, which actually means that you don't get stabilization if you're shooting in HDR. But still, I mean, that's definitely an advantage over here, which is something that you can notice from the fact that it does do better when you're actually shooting against the light, and the dynamic range performance looks better. But the iQOO 7 Legend's facial tones continue to be better, and the Mi 11X Pro can also shoot non-HDR videos at 1080p 60 FPS. I mean, it is smoother, yes, but the amount of exposure jumps that happen are super annoying. Plus, the facial tones are better on the iQOO 7 Legend, which is why you need to switch on that HDR mode. But this is what it looks like. Look at this sort of color in the background. What I like about the iQOO 7 Legend is the colors of my face looks very natural. From what I can tell after testing the cameras is the iQOO 7 Legend has a more well-rounded camera experience compared to the Mi 11X Pro, which does impress with its look and video performance. So we all know by now that the iQOO 7 Legend comes with FunTouch OS, whereas the Mi 11X Pro comes with MIUI 12. And in my previous video, I had made it perfectly clear that, I actually feel that MIUI 12 feels slightly more refined and more feature-rich compared to FunTouch OS. Note that I mentioned compared to FunTouch OS, and it is very vital for you guys to underline those words because there is a context to why I'm saying that, so don't go on storming those comments. For example, I just point out two things. You can bulk delete apps from the home screen, and the search bar is placed at the bottom in the app drawer, which is far more convenient. Then you have other cool features such as floating windows, edge lighting, etc. Although FunTouch has evolved a lot, and for what it is worth, it is far easier to do a simple command like changing a wallpaper on FunTouch. Just saying, try that on MIUI. As for the bugs, MIUI 12 does have some notification issues with WhatsApp, which is not present on FunTouch. But then again, bugs are present even on Oxygen OS and iOS. So by now, it should come as no surprise that I actually prefer MIUI 12 over FunTouch OS, but only slightly so. In fact, I think that both these operating systems need to drop the bloatware a lot, and of course, also those pesky notifications should be stopped when what you get from Get Apps and vApp Store. If there's one thing we've learned in 2021 testing phones with Snapdragon 888 phones, not all of them are built the same way. In benchmark scores, the iQOO 7 Legend is ahead in AnTuTu, and it is pretty similar on Geekbench. But what matters here is the throttling performance. In CPU throttle test, the iQOO 7 Legend is obviously more stable. The Mi 11X Pro drops very quickly. Now, what's more intriguing is that in my 3D Mark Wildlife stress test, the Mi 11X Pro kept crashing the app after it reached a certain threshold of internal heat. In fact, the iQOO 7 Legend got equally hot, but it never crashed the app and it kept going. I had to cool down the devices to around 10 degrees and start the test. You can see from the scores here that the iQOO 7 Legend has far better stability and it doesn't gain as much temperature as the Mi 11X Pro. But the difference is not a lot. I also noticed this in regular gaming where the iQOO 7 Legend was more stable in a game like Genshin Impact compared to the Mi 11X Pro. It is not like the 11X Pro is bad or anything, but it throttles sooner. That said, if you're only playing Call of Duty, then the Mi 11X Pro is equally up to the task. You need to note that these are just minute testing based differences. Most folks buying the Mi 11X Pro will be perfectly satisfied with the performance of Snapdragon 888 on this phone. Having said that, I do still think that if you're a gamer, you should go for the iQOO 7 Legend purely because you get that pressure sensitive touch buttons. Interestingly, the iQOO 7 Legend has a smaller 4000 mAh battery, but the battery life stats are very similar to the Mi 11X Pro. You get close to 5.5 to 6 hours of screen on time on both the phones. But the iQOO 7 Legend has a huge advantage in charging times. You can charge the phone from 0 to 100 in about 27 minutes using the 66 watt inbox charger, which is way faster than the Mi 11X Pro, which takes over an hour. As for the network and radio performance, on 4G networks, both these phones are equally good. Plus, you get support for 4G carrier aggregation as well. But I must say that in calls, the audio quality through the earpiece was slightly better on the Mi 11X Pro compared to the iQOO 7 Legend. It's not that the iQOO 7 Legend is bad, it's just that the Mi 11X Pro is slightly noticeably better. And when it comes to 5G bands, and that's something that's very important for a lot of folks to make that consideration for purchase between these two devices, then the iQOO 7 Legend obviously feels more future-proof because it has already enabled a lot more bands by default compared to the Mi 11X Pro right now. So after using these two phones, is the iQOO 7 Legend still going to be my first recommendation for a phone under Rs 40,000? Yes, but that's after a very careful subjective consideration. It's not going to be the case for everybody, and that will vary from case to case. In fact, I think for a lot of folks, the Mi 11X Pro is going to be a great option. It's got this nice and compact design, and of course, the multimedia performance is better than the iQOO 7 Legend. And more importantly, the Mi brand has existed for a longer time, therefore the service network is slightly more widespread compared to iQOO, which is of course now under Vivo, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Now, why do I prefer the iQOO 7 Legend? Because I still think that this is the more attractive design and it offers better performance for sure and a more well-rounded camera experience. Now, notice that I'm saying well-rounded again. Underline those words before you storm the comments without context. In any case, I'm not dissuading you from storming the comments. In fact, I really want you guys to tell me what you think of this video and of course these two phones as well. And if you have any other questions which I can answer in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, this is Aishar from MySmartPrice signing off. Goodbye and Godspeed, my friends.